My name is Tracy Bruno, and it's good to be here at the Putnam County Library, and I'm here to talk about my program, which is a Dementia Navigator at the Putnam County Health Department, and also to talk about the modifiable risk factors that we can all incorporate into our daily lives to help diminish our risk of getting dementia. So with that being said, let me just tell you a little bit about our program here. So this program was a pilot program put in place through some grant money because it was found out that we just have an overwhelming need to address dementia, the caregivers that take care of those people with dementia, and to get them the help and the resources that they need. So my job at the health department primarily is to give communities education about the risk reduction, inform them about what is Alzheimer's disease and the related dementias, and then to help the caregivers and their families find support and resources that they are needing. We will be providing memory screens out into the public to help with that. A big part of this position is also getting with our primary care physicians and sitting down to talk with them about the importance of doing memory screening tests for our brains, as well as getting your cholesterol checked, your blood pressure, your sugars at your annual visits. So we will be providing patients and their caregivers support either at home. We will be going out to do home assessments for safety. We will do an actual intake where we're gathering information from the person living with dementia and their caregiver to find out what are their current needs. And trying to get them plugged into resources out in the community. And we can do that either by us making the referral to take the burden off of the patient and the caregiver, or we can give them the information that they need so that they can call and get set up for resources that they need. The way the process works is someone with memory loss, they receive a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's or another form of that. That community provider can send in a referral through a REDCap system, which is through the computer system. They can simply make a phone call to the health department to refer someone that way. A family member can call us to schedule an appointment. It is a free service, by the way, so you can come anytime, and that is a free service to you. After providing the direct referrals, we also help them get established to get care planning done and legal work. So it's very important for someone with Alzheimer's or related dementias and the family members to make sure that they do have advanced directives and power of attorneys in place, both medical and financial. So that is something that plays a heavy role into what we'd like to talk about with the family members and those with dementia. Once that's done, we will do follow-ups either in the home. We will be calling patients and family caregivers to see how things are progressing, if they have any new needs, if the information that we gave them was beneficial, or if it was not, and what they need. So it is a very, like I said, overlooked area of healthcare. Too many people will get a diagnosis of dementia and they're just kind of left with that and wondering, where do we go next? So our job is to help guide you through the process from the time you are diagnosed through the entire stage and process of living with dementia. So I'm going to give you a couple of facts here. Right now we've got about 7 million people who are living with Alzheimer's. That is a large number. By the year 2050, it is expected to more than double to over 14 million people. And right now, about 1 in 9 people are actually living with Alzheimer's disease, and 1 in every 3rd senior is going to die of Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. That's a pretty astounding number. It's huge. We currently have about 11 million people that are doing caregiving services. They provide roughly 16 billion hours of unpaid caregiving time, and that results in about $272 billion. That is a lot of money of unpaid time caring for people with Alzheimer's disease. About 80% of Americans are not familiar with Alzheimer's, related dementias, and mild cognitive impairment, which I'll talk a little bit about here coming up. And I just want to give you some numbers too on the increase of Alzheimer's. So between 2000 and 2019, deaths from heart disease have actually gone down by about 7.3%. Deaths from Alzheimer's has increased by 145%. That is alarming. We need to take steps now for early detection and diagnosis. We need to be doing things in our daily lives that are going to make improvements so that hopefully we can decrease our chances of getting Alzheimer's or some form of related dementia. So those are the things I'm going to talk to you about today. So first of all, let me tell you the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's. A lot of people think if they hear the word dementia, that means you have Alzheimer's, and that is not true. Dementia is an umbrella term, and it's used to describe a syndrome or a collection of symptoms that interfere with our memory, our thinking, our reasoning, our judgment, and that it affects our daily living. It is due to biological changes in the brain, either from disease, from say Alzheimer's, frontotemporal or vascular dementia, or it's from traumatic brain injuries. And we see a lot of those. You think about football players who have injuries while they're playing. I think a lot about the military. A lot of our soldiers who've been in explosions and have had traumatic brain injuries. But those are the things that can and do lead to Alzheimer's and related dementia. It is not a normal part of aging, and I will speak more about what's the difference between normal aging and signs of dementia as we go along. And once again, it is damage to our brain cells that is from disease or from trauma. Let's see. The average lifespan of someone with Alzheimer's, once they are diagnosed, is about 4 to 8 years after diagnosis, but there are people that do live 20 years past a diagnosis. So that's a pretty long time. You've got 3 stages that it progresses through. You have your mild or your early stage. You'll start seeing memory issues, things like that. Your moderate stage, you're really starting to struggle with activities of daily living, cooking, driving, dressing, that starts to go down. Severe and late stage is pretty much we have trouble speaking with communication, we have trouble eating, swallowing. So those are just some kind of symptoms of your stages as you go through. Who is at risk? So the number 1 risk factor for Alzheimer's is our age. Can't do anything about that. That is a non-modifiable risk factor. There's nothing we can do about that. Age is the biggest thing we have going against us as far as getting dementia. After the age of 65, the risk of someone getting Alzheimer's will double every 5 years. That's quite a bit. After the age of 85, about a third of people actually have some form of dementia. So those numbers are pretty hefty. Some of those 10 warning signs, these are from the Alzheimer's organization, so things to look for in someone that you may know and you're questioning, okay, is this Alzheimer's, is this normal aging? But memory changes that disrupt daily living. So, yes, people have issues with their memory, and that interferes with things that they normally do. So things like cooking. So my mom has Alzheimer's, and she can make things, she never used a recipe. She knew them front and back, and she made an apple pie that would blow your mind. And she started where she couldn't remember how to make the crust, and she couldn't remember how to roll it out. She would make a bunch of strange concoctions when she cooked. So memory stuff that affects daily living is a sign of dementia or Alzheimer's. Challenges in planning or solving problems, that's another one. They have difficulty just solving minor issues that come up, not sure how to take care of that. They have difficulty completing familiar tasks. So things like doing dishes, doing laundry, things like that, you'll notice. Confusion with time or place. People may get lost in familiar places. They'll look around, suddenly don't know where they're at. My mother had trouble driving. That was the first time she said anything to me about her memory, is she was taking a friend from church something to eat. They were sick. She was going to go to Dunkin' Donuts and get her coffee and a donut. and she got halfway there and she couldn't remember where she was. So she turned around and she came home. So those are things to be on the lookout for. People with Alzheimer's or dementia, they also have trouble with their visual and spatial relationships. That's why they have a lot of falls. They can't gauge the distance between things. They have difficulty with peripheral vision. So as the disease progresses, they will not be able to tell when you're coming up behind them. So you need to be careful when you're coming up behind somebody with dementia. You want to come around to the front so they can see you. You don't want to come up behind them and scare them. They have new problems with words or speaking. You'll find people that have early signs of dementia, or those who are in the process, in the middle of the disease, they can't remember the name of words. So they'll call a pen a thingamajig or a scribbler, or they'll use other words. And sometimes, you know, as part of normal aging, we do that too. I've done that, but it's pretty consistent, and you'll find that more and more they're using different words for things that are familiar to them, but they just can't seem to find the right word to correspond with that. They misplace things and they lose the ability to retrace their steps. I can tell you now, someone with Alzheimer's can hide an elephant in the room and you will never find it. They are great at putting things in places that you cannot find. So if you have a loved one and you notice like they're starting to put things in strange places, that is a big warning sign. Please go take them to their physician and get that checked out. They do have decreased or poor judgment. They tend to withdraw from social activities or work, mostly because they're aware something's going on. They know that their behavior is different, don't want other people to notice it. So they tend to kind of withdraw at times, and so that's something to be aware of. And then they do have changes in the mood or personality. So someone who's, you know, very soft-spoken and has been easygoing and sweet, that they may have sudden mood swings and be very irritable. They may be aggressive. They may be using foul language. So that's another indicator that there is something definitely going on. So you want to get that checked out. So what actually is brain health that I'm going to talk to you about today? It just refers to how well your brain is processing different functions. We have our motor function, which controls our movements and our balance. We have our sensory function, so all of our senses, our taste, smell, touch. Our tactile function is just our feeling and responding to sensations of touch, pressure, pain, and temperature. All of that is affected in the brain. Our cognitive health, which is what I'm mostly speaking about today, and that's our thinking, our remembering, our reasoning, and our emotional function, just how we interpret and respond to emotions. So we are talking about healthy living for our brain and your body today. Well, we will be. So right now, it's showing that Alzheimer's is the 7th leading cause of death in the East. That's actually gone up, and it's now the 6th leading cause. It's showing here that individuals, Medicare recipients who visit an emergency department had either Alzheimer's or related dementia, about 21.5%. That's a pretty big number there. And this is back from 2021 study that they have done. Of all the home health claims that were from Alzheimer's and related dementias, it was about 35.1%. And about 1,417 individuals with Alzheimer's experience a higher rate of emergency room visits. So that's the cost of care for Alzheimer's and dementia it's really on the rise.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
I've heard that Alzheimer's itself is not the cause of death, but it's the things like pneumonia, the falling that cause the...
Yes, good question. So, you know, Alzheimer's a lot is not the cause of death. It is usually pneumonia or falls. Falls are a huge issue. The balance, like I said, the visual spatial starts to change as the disease progresses. Organs, everything starts to shut down in the body because as the brain deteriorates and shrinks, it atrophies because of the cell death with what's going on in the brain. everything starts to shut down. Falls are probably one of the top things that people with dementia probably die from because there are so many of them. Aspiration pneumonia, because as the disease progresses, people stop eating, they can't swallow, so they choke or fluids go down the wrong way, they end up with aspiration pneumonia. So good question, but yes, that is a huge cause of deaths how they configure those numbers, not sure if that's configured in, to that total number of deaths from Alzheimer's itself or from the complications that arise from it.
What ages are we seeing? Is it getting younger?
We are seeing early onset dementia, which is anything, before the age of 65, so 50s and 60s. And the thing with Alzheimer's too, I wanted to point out is it starts decades, changes in the brain that lead to dementia or Alzheimer's, about 20 years before you will actually have a symptom. So that is a long time for this disease process to be going on with the brain before we actually notice, hey, I've got a problem with my memory. That's why the risk factor reduction is so important. Let's do what we can and do it now and do it earlier and earlier so we can hopefully help, decrease our chances of getting that diagnosis, because that's big.
And is there anything that points to that being hereditary?
There is some. So the studies that they have conducted do show if you have family members, especially women are twice as more likely, by the way, to end up with Alzheimer's or related dementia, unfortunately for us. So if we have a mother, grandmother, people in the family with dementia, there is a strong evidence suggesting that we are at an increased risk. Doesn't mean we're going to get it, but we do have an increased risk of getting the dementia. Absolutely. So just to talk about our brains here, our brain is the control center of our body. We've got over 1 billion nerve cells or neurons that create a branching network, and that's how it gets information. That's how we form our thoughts and keep our memories. Signals travel through the brain, form our memories, thoughts, and feelings, and Alzheimer's is what destroys these brain cells. The heart and our brain are interrelated, and so what you do to protect your heart, it can also help your brain to continue to operate at its best. So we always say, if you have good heart health, you're also promoting good brain health as well. The brain needs blood flow, and it depends on oxygen and adequate blood to operate. So every time your heart beats, your brain is using about 20 to 25% of the blood from every heartbeat that comes through. Our brain is small, but it's mighty. It's about 2% of our body weight, and it uses about 20% of the energy to do what it needs to do. So we need to make sure that we are taking good care of our brain as well as we are our heart and other areas for health. So I think.
What if you're born with traumatic brain injury?
What if you're born with traumatic brain injury?
Mm-hmm.
So, well, if you're born with traumatic brain injury, we do consider that a form of a probable cause of dementia. So you're going to have some issues. What are you asking in particular? Like, what are the steps for that, or? So primarily, even if you were born with a traumatic brain injury, I mean, we're still going to look at things that you want to promote throughout your lifetime to keep functioning at the highest level that you can function. So, it's a healthy diet, it's managing chronic disease, hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol. They all play a part in our heart health and our brain health. So you want to make sure you take care of those. Sleep is a big indicator. It's a big factor, and I'll talk more about that too. It's interesting what happens when we sleep with our brain and how that can tie us to having a diagnosis of dementia. So that's a big one, and that's something I don't get enough of. So I don't think any of us get quite enough. I kind of talked already a little bit about this. Again, that dementia is just that umbrella term. It's a collection of symptoms that is related to our memory, thinking, behaviors, and a decline, and it's due to biological changes in the brain. Mixed dementia is very prevalent. Most of the studies have shown that in research that they've done, that when people do pass from some form of dementia, it's usually a mixed dementia. There's a very small percent that's actually just Alzheimer's only. It's usually Alzheimer's with another form of dementia that is mixed in there. It is an irreversible progressive brain disease, Alzheimer's. There is no cure. It is fatal. So that is something that we want to address, like I said, as early as we can. It's important. This is going to show you just a picture of the brain here. So the hallmarks of Alzheimer's is you have what they call amyloid plaques. The beta amyloid is a protein that's in the brain. Naturally, what happens is we get this excess of it, and it's a very sticky protein, and they start to make clumps. And those clumps interfere with those neurons making the jump and the connection. So it disrupts things like our memory and our thinking. It is also shown the tangles, we call them the tau tangles. And so once those little nerve fibers start to tangle up, it can actually destroy the structure of a cell. And when that happens, they start to die off. So you start to lose those brain cells. And you can see on the left side here what a healthy brain looks like, and that's probably one of the only times you want to have something really plump on our body, is to have a plump brain. The right side is showing advanced Alzheimer's, and you can see the deterioration there in the right side of the brain from an Alzheimer's patient there. So that is quite interesting. All right. So, let me ask y'all, is Alzheimer's a normal part of aging?
Yes.
It's
No.
false.
Yes, the answer is false. It's a progressive and fatal brain disease. The symptoms usually develop very slowly and get worse over time, and it is definitely not a normal part of the aging process. With that being said, I'm just going to give you a few indicators of what normal aging looks like versus Alzheimer's. So memory loss. So in normal aging, you may temporarily forget names, which I do every day, or where you left your car keys. On the other hand, indicators of dementia, you have difficulty remembering familiar names, places, or recent or important events. So there's a big difference in maybe forgetting someone's name or where your car keys are at versus I don't remember who this person, who this is or what place I'm at. So disorientation. So normal aging, you may forget the day of the week. If you're retired, I took off quite a chunk of time to stay home and take care of my mom. And I couldn't even remember what day of the week it was. And I told her, this is what it's like to be retired. You don't have to know what day of the week it is. Or why you enter the room. How many of us have gone into a room and then you're like, I forgot what I just came in here for. That's normal part of aging. So big sigh of relief there, you're okay. But on the other spectrum, possibility of dementia, you get lost on your own street or forget how you get home. You have no idea. Challenged by mental tasks. So normal aging, you make a mistake maybe when you're balancing out your checkbook. Hopefully it's not too bad and you're not going to be in the hole, but that happens. Whereas someone with dementia, you're unable to complete tasks that may be familiar to you, such as balancing a checkbook. You don't have any idea how to do it, or you cannot follow a recipe. Difficulties completing activities of daily living. Sometimes, we may need an assistance with an electronic device. I still call my adult children for help with my iPhone because there's so many things on that thing, or a computer. Whereas dementia, you may need assistance brushing your teeth, getting dressed, bathing. That's a big difference. Trouble using words appropriately. So sometimes we may occasionally struggle to find the right word. We can't think of the name of something. Whereas someone with dementia, they have difficulty completing a sentence and following directions and conversations. They just simply cannot follow the conversation at all. Poor judgment, normal aging, you may make some questionable or debatable decisions at times, whereas someone with dementia, they're unsure how to get dressed, or they may give out money, tons of money to solicitors excessively, things like that. Changes in mood and personality. Normal aging, you're tired with obligations, you're irritable, when a routine is disrupted, versus someone with dementia, they have increased suspicion. A lot of people with dementia, caregivers and family have said that they're just super suspicious about, someone's taking all their money and things like that, and they have a big withdrawal and disinterest in things around them. So,
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Now in my dealings with dementia, that in certain situations, I have seen where they will be at home and they think they hear noises outside and they get very fearful, and then they'll start calling the police or something like that. I saw that, and it was diagnosed as dementia when it first started.
yeah. Yes, that happens a lot. They will hear things that aren't there. They will see things. Hallucinations are a
Yes.
big part of it. I use my mom a lot as an example, but we've gone through quite a journey with her diagnosis. But she would constantly see a little girl outside,
Yes.
and it would be a tree that had kind of bloomed, and it looked like a skirt. And she would see a bucket and think someone was standing there and be fearful. So what they're seeing, what they're hearing, they do have the hallucinations, and that's very common with dementia. So,
I know with my mother-in-law, whenever I was taking care of her, it was the chicken in the chicken coop. She just thought that somebody was over there murdering that chicken, and I would go out there, and I really believed her because she said it with such conviction. And I would go out there and look, and I'm like, no, they're okay.
yeah, and those kinds of things are very real to them. So, you want to approach that carefully. Like, you don't ever want to, oh no, there's nothing there. You're seeing things. There's ways to just talk and be like, oh, okay, well, it's, just to assure them that there's nothing
Sure.
dangerous there, and kind of divert. See if you can divert the conversation to something different if it's really upsetting to them. But yeah, that's a pretty big thing with them there. And once again, it's just talking about, that Alzheimer's is not a normal part of the aging process. So some risk factors that I'm going to start getting into. So we have our modifiable and non-modifiable. Like I said, advancing age is the #1 risk for developing dementia. Like I said, after 65, it's gonna double every 5 years after that. Women, we have twice the risk of developing Alzheimer's than men do. Ethnicity, African Americans are twice as more likely, and Hispanics are 1.5 times more likely to develop dementia. And there is some evidence that genetics do play a role. So if we have family members, parents, grandparents that have dementia, we may have a bigger chance of getting that. So we're going to talk about some modifiable risk factors, so things that we can change. Evidence has shown that we can lower our risk by up to 40% if we make those changes. And like I said, since the changes in the brain start about 20 years before we will ever notice a symptom, it is important to start as early as we can. So education on this stuff, hopefully will reach people, and we can start doing things earlier and earlier to help with that. So we're going to talk a little bit today about things like sleep, smoking, mental health, physical activity, eating right, our cognitive engagement, our social engagement, and those are some of the things that we can work on to help kind of reduce our risks here. Story of our health. So our overall health, it's affected by our genes and family history, and sometimes that good old heredity kicks us, and there's nothing we can do. I was a nurse for a very long time. I'm not working in a nursing position in this job here, but sometimes no matter what you do, you're eating healthy, you're exercising, you're doing that, but sometimes our good old genes and family history catch up to us. Our environment definitely affects our health. One of the things I'm not going to touch base on too much, but it is a risk factor, is pollution. That is a new risk factor that they have come out with, that they have attributed to possibly being a risk factor for us with dementia. And you think about all the stuff that's chemicals and all the stuff in the air that's sprayed around. So that is something new that they have come out with and said that we believe that there is some kind of a tie, and they're still doing research on that right now to find out how much of a risk is that to us. And then of course our lifestyle and what we do. So, when you go to your physician, ask them what your number should be. Blood pressure. Midlife hypertension is a major risk factor with dementia, something that I was not aware of before. So keeping our blood pressure under good control is very important. Those numbers seem to change quite often. Being in the medical field since the 80s, it has changed a lot what high blood pressure is considered to be. It's usually after you get at least 3 readings of a blood pressure over a certain number. Way back when it used to be 150 over 90. I believe now it may be 140 over 90. I'm not sure about that. Diabetic patients, a lot of times providers would like that number to be even lower, 130 over 80 or so. Our blood sugars that we get checked, so usually when you go in for your annual physicals, they're going to be checking your A1C. C is a percentage of what your blood sugar's been running over like a 3-month period. So you want to get your blood sugar checked and you want to know what that number is. Your weight and your BMI. Obesity, they have listed as a risk factor, and mostly because with obesity, you tend to have more chronic issues. So you tend to see more people, if you're overweight, tend to have more high blood pressure, more diabetes, which are risk factors for dementia. And then our cholesterol. Our cholesterol and our heart health is very important, so get your cholesterol checked. One of my pushes and drives is to get with our primary care physicians in Putnam County and sit down with them, like I said, and somehow get them to do memory screens with your annual physicals. So people coming in for a Medicare annual physical or just your regular annual visit, I would like for them to incorporate this every single time, because checking our brain health is every bit as important as these factors up here. Because even though we may have all these and they're all in line, we can still have issues with dementia, and if we don't catch it early, we're just plugging along until we get to these later phases where there's not much chance of getting in for early clinical trials and medications to kind of sustain your cognitive abilities at that time. So that's very, very important.
Is the amyloid plaques a subset of cholesterol, or is that?
No, they have those, the amyloid, it's a protein, so it's found in the cells in the brain. The problem is there gets to be too much of it, and then since they're so sticky, they start to clump up. But,
So somebody with high cholesterol shouldn't worry that they're gonna get Alzheimer's?
that doesn't mean that you're gonna do that, because when we think of cholesterol, we think of plaques and whatnot. In fact, I'm gonna show you something real quick. I actually brought a little cholesterol model, since we're talking about it, good time to pull it out. So, I'm gonna show you kind of this is our little model here of cholesterol. So this is your people with good cholesterol. This is someone who's got a high cholesterol and has plaque buildup. If you turn that over, look at the blood trying to get through all that plaque. So you can see how that moves, and it's getting stuck in there. So having high cholesterol, we get those plaques, we end up with things, strokes, reduced blood flow, leading to vascular dementia. So important to do it, but that doesn't mean that's going to affect the amyloid plaques.
Is that kind of like what a blocked artery would look like?
Yes. Yes. When your when arteries starts to get occluded with all those plaques, that is all the plaque build up there on there, and that's the blood trying to get squeezed through there. So just kind of gives you a little good demonstration, the visual there on what that looks like. All right, so what the science tells us, and once again, so many factors that increase the risk of heart disease and stroke, that can also increase the risk of cognitive decline and dementia. So once again, our blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, and good cholesterol is good for the heart, and what's good for the heart is good for the brain. So kind of keep that in mind. What's heart healthy is usually brain healthy as well. All right, true or false here. All right, it's never too early or too late to incorporate healthy habits.
True.
Very good, yes. People of all ages, you can benefit from adding in more healthy behaviors. It doesn't matter what time of life or season of life we're in. Anytime we can make a change that's healthy, it's gonna be good for our bodies and good for our brains. Alright, so next we're gonna talk about the risk factors here, and the first is gonna be getting good quality sleep, being smoke-free, taking care of your mental health, get moving, eating healthy, challenging yourself, and staying connected. So getting quality sleep. Sleep is essential for overall health and well-being. I think we all know that. If we miss one night of sleep, we're kind of dragging the next day. But periods of prolonged lack of sleep do have a impact on our overall health. It affects our ability to maintain healthy blood pressure and blood sugar as well. And it can cause problems with our memory and our thinking. And I had a few things here I wanted to share about sleep. So, poor sleep leads to increased amyloid plaques. You were asking about cholesterol. Poor sleep actually causes those. Even one night of sleep, studies have shown individuals have an increased amount of those amyloid plaques in the morning. Because what happens at night is our brain goes through this flushing system, and that's usually when we get deep sleep. So our restorative sleep and deep sleep. And that's when something is triggered, it kind of comes in and it flushes those amyloid plaques out. So getting that good deep sleep and getting quality sleep is essential. It's not so much the quantity, although 7 to 9 hours is ideal. But if we just get sleep that we kind of toss and turn, we wake up a lot, we're not getting that good deep sleep that helps to flush that out, we're still going to wake up. Those plaques are going to build, and over time, it's really increasing our risk for dementia. It says of people who sleep 6 hours or less a night in their 50s and 60s, you're more likely to develop dementia in later life. So I'm in trouble because I don't sleep very well. Not even a little bit. Sleep also helps with our stress level. Stress level is another big thing. If we know that we're stressed, when we're really stressed out, we can't focus. We have what we call brain fog. We don't function very well. We have high cortisol levels, can start gaining weight with that. So these things are so interconnected. But our sleep is very, very important to try and get as much as we can and as good a sleep as we can. Couple of things that it mentions here is what kind of environment helps me to sleep, what changes can I make to create a more peaceful sleep setting, and how can I minimize disruptions. So basically having a cool, comfortable room, if you're cold-blooded and you freeze at night, then maybe having a warmer room, but I like my room nice and cool to sleep and use lots of blankets. So control the room temperature and the amount of light. So any of that blue light that may be coming off a computer or your phone, maybe go ahead and get that turned off. Turning off screens before bedtime to wind down, read a book, do some other activity, but try not to be on electronics right before you go to sleep. Eating heavy meals and things that have a lot of sugar in it tend to keep us up more at night. So, and if you're having problems and you cannot sleep, please go to your doctor and talk to them about possibly getting you some help and something to do.
So I would think sleep apnea, since that's on increased.
Sleep apnea is, yes, that is a sleep disorder that is associated with more increased risk for dementia. So yes, if you're snoring a lot and waking your partner or yourself up throughout the night and you're waking up feeling groggy, a sleep study would be a good thing to possibly go get done and check to make sure you don't have issues with that, and get a CPAP machine to help you with that. Smoking definitely has a direct impact on our health. As we know, we're more familiar with lung cancer and those types of things with smoking. But we also have research that shows that smoking does increase the risk of cognitive decline and may increase the risk of dementia. And quitting smoking can reduce someone's chance of developing cognitive decline back down to the level of non-smokers. So that's a pretty big deal. I think in the latest information, it was about 9 years later, they felt like people were back to the level of a non-smoker. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's about the number that it had said. But smoking causes all types of inflammation, so that inflammation affects everything in your body, especially your brain. So if you need help with smoking cessation, talk to your doctor. maybe get on a program, a smoking cessation program. They have those online, or they can get you something. They have medications to help you quit smoking. So hard habit to break, but well worth it for so many, your cardiovascular health, which is tied again to our brain health. So those are important things to make sure that we take care of. Taking care of our mental health. It's important to prioritize ourselves sometimes, make time for ourselves. We are a very busy nation. I feel like there's not enough hours in the day to complete everything that we need to get done, but we need to start taking care of ourselves. Running ourselves into the ground and multitasking has been shown to lead to some cognitive decline. The brain can only process so much, and so if you're a multitasker, that's great, but sometimes you also need to kind of slow it down and take time for yourself. Breathe and relax. You need that time, that downtime. Pay attention to your stress level. Any symptoms of anxiety, depression, or other concerns, they do affect the health of your brain. So please take care of yourself, especially if you're taking care of a loved one with Alzheimer's. Caregivers' health tends to go down the drain during the caregiving time. They either have chronic diseases that are not managed or made worse, or they develop chronic diseases while caregiving for somebody. So just a couple things, what are some things I enjoy doing? How can I build breaks into my day, and how can I focus on self-care? So just a couple questions to ask yourself, and then make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Whether it's going to lunch with a friend, read a book, take a nap, take a walk, whatever you can do to get some time for yourself, we need to start making time for ourselves. All right, physical activity. So we want to get moving here. Physical activity can improve our brain health, 100%. That is one of the strongest research stuff they have, is getting physical activity can and does help with our brain health and our heart. So we want to make sure that we are getting consistent cardiovascular activity. It does reduce cognitive decline. It may directly benefit brain cells and reduce other risk factors, and they think is the improved blood flow and oxygen that we get while we're getting this exercise. Any increase in movement can have an impact on our overall health. So if you're sitting around any little bit, anything you can do, if you're chair bound, you can do some chair yoga. You can grab weights, you can grab cans of soup, you can do, some things for our muscles. There's lots we can do, even if we're not able to physically walk around or get around too much. So just, what activities do you want to try? How can you build more physical activity into your day? And who can I ask to join? I think it's always more fun if you got someone to do it with. I think they keep you motivated, and it's always a lot more fun. They recommend about 150 minutes weekly of kind of some more cardiovascular, so walking and things like that. So that's about 2.5 hours a week. So if you think about a week, 2.5 hours, it doesn't seem like a lot, but yet it is, because we're busy. We're busy people, but we really need to make time and incorporate that into things. Eating healthy. All right, here's a big one. So our health. If you type in type 3 diabetes now, it will pull up and talk about Alzheimer's, because there is research now that is looking at possible insulin resistance within the brain. That is still up in the air, so I don't want to say that is definitely what's going on, but there is some research now, and like I said, if you pull up type 3 diabetes, it will talk about Alzheimer's disease. So we need to be careful of what we are putting into our bodies. So what science tells us, what's good for the heart again is also good for our brain. Nutritious food is fuel for our brains. And eating a balanced diet can reduce our risk of heart disease, cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, stroke, diabetes. So we know that what we're putting in our mouths has a direct impact on our health, not only for short-term, but for long-term purposes. So we need to be very mindful of what we're putting into our bodies. So some of the diets out there are the DASH diet, and that's a big one that sometimes providers will give to people with high blood pressure. So it's, and the Mediterranean diet. They are heavy on dealing with fruits and vegetables, filling up our plates with fruits and vegetables, things like nuts, beans, and whole grains, brown rice, wheat bread, things like that. Lean meats, fish and poultry, healthier fats, so cooking more with olive oil, laying off the vegetable oils and things like that, and limiting our sugar and salt. That is a big one for us. We like our sugar and we like our salt, because if you take it out, then sometimes it doesn't taste very good. So there is also another diet on here I wanted to go over with you. It's called the Mind Diet, and it's kind of a hybrid between the two. But it's a big emphasis on berries and green leafy vegetables, nuts, beans, whole grains, pretty much the same, olive oils, fish, and things like that. So, does anyone read a nutrition label at all? Okay, okay, good. What do you look for when you're reading the nutrition label? What's the main thing you're looking for?
For me, it's the salts and the sugars.
The salts and the sugar?
I look for like the dyes are the least amount of ingredients to give my kids
Okay.
snacks and stuff.
Yes, that's great. And they always say, you know, if we shop the perimeters of our grocery stores, that's where we're getting all the best stuff. That's mostly our whole grain foods and stuff. The ultra processed food is having a huge impact on our sugars and our health. Those are things that are pretty much stripped of all our nutrients, and they are crammed full of like flavorings and stuff, because when you strip a lot of things out of it, or the fat out of stuff, you're pounding it full of sugars and additives to make it taste good, so people are gonna wanna eat it. So like cereal bars, things, candy bars, things along those lines, chips, all that
Even
stuff.
peanut butter, because
Yeah, you have to be careful with that too, and
the
the
other day I
sugars.
was looking for some healthy peanut butter. I did not want just the regular processed. And I bet I went through 2 shelves just pushing back and looking before I found peanut butter.
Yes. I want to just tell you kind of a measurement. So the recommended amount of sugar in grams is 50 grams a day. On one of the studies I found. I'm working with our health educators that are going to be doing some things on like the amount of sugar and like what we drink. A Mountain Dew, a bottle of Mountain Dew has 51 grams of sugar. That exceeds your sugar for the day, and that equals almost a half a cup of sugar. So just think about that. Think about 50 grams being about a half a cup of sugar, and then go home and look at what's in your cupboard and look at the amount of sugar. Like something maybe 7 or 10 grams. Okay, but what if you have 2 or 3 of those? You know, that's something small, and that adds up very, very quickly. And then if you look at all your food throughout the day, it's like, how much sugar are we getting? We are getting exorbitant amounts of sugar, and we have to start paying attention to how much sugar we're putting in our bodies.
What would you say to those people that say, okay, but I drink diet soda or 0 calorie soda? I'm not putting anybody, but I'm, no,
I'm not.
I'm thinking about, you know, those are different types of sugars being added. Is there any?
So what I would say to that, so I'm not a nutritionist, but what diet drinks are what's put into them, like the aspartame and things, that they have lots of studies showing are not really good for us. I almost think if you have to have a soda, if you have to have one, I would prefer to drink a regular soda than a diet drink. People think diet drinks, you're gonna lose weight on that, but they can be full of different forms of sugar. So we have to be careful and know what those other names are. Sugar is disguised in many, many forms. So syrups, anything, dextrose, any of those O's at the end, they're sugar. So look at your ingredient, go home and look it up and make sure, like, what is this if you're not sure what it is. Because you read some of those names and we can't even pronounce it. And they've used every letter of the alphabet to come up with some of these names for these drinks.
The other question I have is, because we're talking about diets and that, where does the United States fit into Alzheimer's according to the rest of the world? Are we like leading?
I don't know if we're leading, but if we're not, we're way up there. So there's other places that have a lower risk, and basically I think a lot of it is on their diet. So their diet, we know, plays a big important part of it. I would say with our percentage of diabetes, obesity here in the United States. We are if we're not right at the top, we are certainly headed that way because the numbers are just astronomical right now. And like I said, they're projected to more than double to 14 million by 2050, 2060. So we are on the incline, and we need to start paying attention to what we're putting in our bodies and to what we're doing here. I wanted to show you something as well that I brought. I'm just gonna pass this around. You guys, can look at it. It just shows how much sugar and the grams of it. It's kind of shows us how much that we're getting there, and it tells what it's for. So in chocolate chip cookies, a peach, fruit and grain bars. This will kind of show you how much sugar and the grams in each of it. So we really don't realize how much sugar we're putting into our bodies. It's quite a bit. So
Sugar has no sugar.
So how can I cook differently to make my meals healthier? What healthy foods can I swap in, and what new foods am I willing to try? So if you have a palate that does not like to try new things, it may not be for you. But the big thing is using olive oil instead of butter. Or the stick margarine, using some sodium-free spices. So flavor up your food with a bunch of spices. Just check on the back because sodium can be hid as well. And a lot of products too may say low sodium or reduced, but you have to be careful because sometimes they'll put in added flavorings to make it taste like that are not good for us. So you really have to read your labels and do your work. It is a lot of work, but once you get used to it, it becomes a familiar habit, and it's a good one to have. Focus on what you can add in. So really plan your meal around vegetables. Fill your plate full of vegetables. It's amazing how little we get of vegetables throughout the day if you think about it. It probably just at dinner maybe, or a salad here and there, but we really are on the low spectrum of eating those vegetables that are so good for our heart and our brain. Build your meals around the vegetables, beans, and whole grains, and choose leaner cuts of meat. So that's really important. They do recommend like fish, if you like fish, like salmon and things like that, a couple times a week is good for heart health. Just a little note about vitamins and supplements. So you'll find a lot of things online about supplements that can help with your cognitive abilities, or supplements. They don't have enough research yet. There's the latest one, someone had asked me, it was on coconut oil, because that was something that they said, and I can't endorse that. I don't know. There's not enough research. Basically, what I've read, there could be something to that, but there's just not enough research and evidence right now for that. So just, but things that we know for sure that they have done research that has proven itself is focusing on our nutrition. So really focus on what we're eating. Talk to your doctor about any nutritional supplements that you may need, because there are some things out there that may help with certain things. So that's always an option. All right, challenging your brain may help lower your risk of cognitive decline. Yes, continuing to challenge our minds as we age may lower the risk of cognitive decline. And why is that? So keeping our brains active. Anytime we do something new, we're forming new pathways. So the more we do, the more we learn, we are making new pathways in our brain, so that hopefully our cognitive decline will be much less, if at all. So the more you can do, the more you learn. The research has talked about our education, even as adults and older adults. Go take a class, go learn something new. Keeping our kids in school, I think they said at least to the age of 15 was imperative. They just need to make better choices. That education helps. Any new learning that we can get is highly recommended to keep our brains healthy and functioning. So we do always recommend, get out there and learn something new. Maybe it's learning to play guitar, which I've had for 3 years and I'm still struggling with it. But just doing that. Cognitive engagement, it's a term. It means keeping our minds active and challenged, learning new skills, work on something challenging or engaging. Once again, you don't want to overburden yourself and be, too stressed out at what you're doing, but you do want to learn new things. So keeping our mind active, it does form new connections among the brain cells. It encourages blood flow to our brains. Mentally stimulating activities can possibly maintain or even improve our cognition. And engaging in formal education may keep our brains healthy and can provide protection against developing dementia. So just, what new hobbies or skills do you want to learn? What activities sound fun, like a challenge? And what topics would you like to learn more about? I'm playing in a pickleball tournament this week, and I've only played for 10 minutes before, so that is my new challenge. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. This is just some suggestions on what you can do. And staying connected. Connecting with others socially has a lot of health benefits. So when we're withdrawn and we're not around people, it really it plays a part in our mental health as well. So getting connected and being around people, we tend to staying socially active may support brain health. They've said is associated with living longer with fewer disabilities. And those who feel well connected, they just tend to make healthier choices overall. So we want to make sure we are social and we're getting out there. So how do you like to stay connected to others? How can you get involved in your community and any clubs or groups? And there's on Hip Cookville, you can go on there and find all kinds of things there that you can connect with. So, you can volunteer. There's always volunteers at the health department. You can come volunteer. So once again, just those are just some of the things that we went over: getting good sleep, being smoke-free, keeping our minds active and healthy, getting move, staying connected, and challenge your brain. And I was going to do a mini cog, but we're out of time. A mini cog is just a simple test, and this is one of the memory screens I'll be doing out in the public and in primary care offices if they would like me to. It's a short test, and this is one of many memory screens that can be done. Ask you, give you 3 words, have you repeat those, and ask you to hang on to those and try and remember them. And then we're going to have you draw a clock and make sure you can get your clock in the right, your numbers right, and put the right time, and then ask you those words. So once again, I am at the health department. I am a free service charge. This is a little bit about the program again, but you can, if you are someone living with dementia, if you are a caregiver who needs help navigating, I am a free service charge. So you can call the health department directly and ask to be connected, and I will be more than happy to meet with you. So, any questions? Nope. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
And thank you, the Putnam County Health Department, for coming out and doing this. I do have a couple of questions for you, because
Sure.
we're with VR, and our whole goal is obviously to help people with disabilities find employment. And dementia is a disability, which is obviously one that would be very, very detrimental to someone looking for work. But what advice would you give to people that are caretakers, that are maybe having to help take care of them and work and balance their life? What advice is out there for those?
For the caregivers to get some
Yeah.
help, you need respite care and you need support groups. So those are the 2 big ones. Some people, I know you're not comfortable having someone come in to care for your loved one, but honestly, you need to take that break. Or it could be a friend, it could be maybe someone from your church could come in and stay with your loved one so you can get out for a few hours. I mean, just having those few hours of time to yourself to do something for yourself. Caregiver burnout is an ultimate high, and you cannot take care of someone living with dementia well without taking care of yourself. So there's in-person support groups here in Cookville. There's one in Livingston. There's actually a few. There's a lot of support groups online. There's also something called the Memory Cafe with Tennessee Alzheimer's. So if you have a loved one with dementia and you're the caregiver, you can get in touch with them. You can be a part of the Memory Cafe. They meet, I think it's twice a month still. In person, that you do activities. You may go to lunch. You may have a day where they go sing. They've been out to Harmony Lane Farms to feed the baby goats. It's a good way for you and the person living with dementia to do something together with other people who are also living with dementia and the caregivers. But it's really important to have the support groups to go and talk to people, vent out your frustrations, your problems, listen to the feedback that you get from the other caregivers, because the information is crucial. It's vital. And there's just something I've said before about being in a room with people that know exactly what you're going through. that is so beneficial. It just makes you feel like you're not alone in this process, because it is a very difficult road. It is, Alzheimer's does not, and related dementias doesn't affect just that person. It affects that caregiver and their families heavily. It is a heavy load to bear. But it can be done, it can be done well, but you have got to take care of yourself, and you need those support groups and the respite care. Absolutely.
Question.
Yes.
So that kind of made me think of someone, and so like they will come up with different scenarios of, you know, things that are not real.
Mm-hmm.
For the caretaker, is it best to kind of just go along with whatever they're saying as opposed to correct them or something?
Yes. One thing that you never want to do with Alzheimer's is you never want to argue, because you will never win. It's better not to correct them. Kind of, you can go along, and you know, some people are like, well, I don't want to lie. Well, okay, but is it benefiting that person to correct them, or is it just going to make them more agitated, angry, and more confused? Because if they're seeing things, that's very real to them. So that is their reality. So you have to understand that. And I had said earlier too, sometimes it's just diverting the conversation. Can you divert it to something else so you can get off that subject? And a lot of times that'll work. Like, hey, let's walk in the kitchen, or let's go grab a piece of mail. I mean, anything you can do to kind of divert that if it's becoming kind of an issue and they're just fixated on it, especially if it's something that's upsetting them, you can try to divert. But do not, they do not recommend correcting someone with Alzheimer's or dementia. And like I said, just don't ever argue, and you know, just calm, try and stay calm. It can be very frustrating. It's a very difficult job sometimes. You want to keep the noise level down. I am a loud person. My mother told me many times with dementia, you are talking too loud. So I'd have to tone it down. And once I did, her demeanor would change. So it's that loud, the loud voice. So yeah, so just, that is their reality. So you just have to kind of go with that. And hopefully you can, like I said, just kind of divert it and maybe do another activity or change the subject for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And this has been great information, and we're in the great state of Tennessee, but if people are seeing this outside the state of Tennessee, where would they reach out to find help?
In all the states, you have what they call like a triple AD, which we have here in town. It's with the Upper Cumberland Development District. So it's the area Agency on Aging and Disability. They can reach out to them first. They have all types of resources there. They have a family caregiver support group there. They have legal services that can help getting advance directives, power of attorneys done, which are really important in the early stages. They have all kinds of resources there with the triple AD agencies. Reach out to your Alzheimer's Association. So that is a huge one. They are so full of information and resources. If they can't provide what you need there, I guarantee they'll probably have someplace and a resource for you to go to find out what you need. So those are great resources. And check with your health department as well. Check with your local health departments and see what's out there. So.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for everybody for joining us today. Remember, we are the Tennessee Department of Human Services Vocational Rehabilitation. If you know someone with a disability or a need, please reach out and refer them to us. Thank you.